Welcome back to the broadcast. Time for your call now. I have the final word on what we're discussing today. And Churchill Amada says Dadaab camp has been in existence for 20 years, creating more problems, including refugees born there, breeding terrorists, and so on. UNHCR hasn't even resolved the issue after initial notice. The camp should never be permanent. Close it soonest. Bonakili, you were saying something when we were off air that Kenya cannot return a refugee to where they ran away from.
Yes.
But it can relocate them to somewhere else.
Yes. Not Kenya itself, but Kenya can say, look, we have a problem. We don't want these refugees. But refugees must come. If they have come from South Sudan, you do not have authority or right to take them back to South Sudan.
Right.
But you have to do the registration and inform UNHCR. Don't forget that the UN is going to give you some funding to protect these people. So you can only, what we are saying as a country is once we have registered these people, and there are too many now, there are about 600,000-700,000 of them in the country, they should be forwarded to another country. They can go to Rwanda, they can go to Tanzania, they can go to Uganda. Why is it only us?
Thank you.
There is something to do with a procedural rationalism that the Ministry of Interior and Foreign Affairs and the government of Kenya needs to consider. And that's why, for example, what we were talking about earlier about issues to do with the documentation of refugees and making sure that their rights also are not endangered. And that's why, for instance, when I made earlier citation of the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, provides that there is necessary mechanisms that need to be embraced when you are handling or taking care of refugees within your territory as a country. So right now what Kenya needs to do is to work closely with the United Nations and especially the High Commissioner for Refugees and ensure that the transition process, right from identification, recognition, is taken care of and handled properly in this process of transition.
Very quickly, Mark Bichache, give me your thoughts on that.
That my co-panelists are forgetting is that they think this is a legal tussle for Kenya in terms of refugees. Far from it. That's not the case here. The case is Kenya is trying to force the international hand to switch its eyes and its focus on the issues of the maritime dispute. That is what this is about, and let us not spend time trying to figure out what the refugee rights are or aren't. Now, with that in perspective, what is Kenya trying to do? Number one, the international community needs to understand that changing that border not only affects Kenya, but also affects countries as far from Kenya as Mozambique and South Africa. Because as we speak, through MOU, through bilateral discussions, Mozambique and South Africa are negotiating their border. Let us also not forget that Kenya and Tanzania, if we were to do an equidistant border, as Somalia is suggesting, then parts of Pemba and Zanzibar will be in Kenya. Now, this is the kind of ridiculousness that Somalia, through a judge who obviously seems compromised based on the rulings that have come out against Kenya that have no other precedence, that this judge and that bench is biased. And that bias, therefore, is what is causing Kenya to take the steps that it is taking. Number two, if Somalia feels that it is confident enough to handle more territory, then for sure they should be confident enough to take back their refugees, because you cannot have one without the other. You cannot be unable to secure what you have, yet you're busy trying to steal from someone else, because this indeed is theft. So if Somalia feels confident enough that it can take up territories it has never had from the beginning, then surely, instead of the maritime border, she should be more concerned about her citizens sitting within the refugee camps.
All right. Let's go to the phone line and listen to what Kenyans have to say about this. Let's begin in the county of Garissa and talk to IBRAHIM HASSAN. IBRAHIM, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mazangu.
Asante sana kwa kupiga simu. Give us your thoughts.
Nianze wapi? Nianze ya Ruto Raila Alliance?
Yes.
Kwanza niseme hivi, wanasema in politics there is no permanent enmity, only permanent interest.
Naam.
Uhuru na Raila kuungana haitakuwa a surprise kwangu.
Ruto na Raila.
Ruto na Raila. lakini vile Max Mchacha alisema constitution is not visible for deputy to become a deputy president again.
Endelea.
Lakini unajua tu baba hawezi kuwa running mate wa Ruto because yeye anamshinda umri na pia kisiasa.
Sasa Ruto atakubali kuwa running mate?
Ruto, going by his ego and hubris, I don't think it will allow that condition. Na baba kuwa running mate ya Ruto, I think hiyo supporters na watu wake hawatakubali na pia mjeuri wake pia hautakubali.
Interesting thoughts. Alafu tupe maoni yako kuhusu One Kenya Alliance. Unafikiria wako vipi?
One Kenya Alliance, first of all, it has some national outlook. Kwa sababu hapa tuko na Gideon Moi ambaye anatoka Rift Valley, kuna Musalia Mudavadi na Mbeta na wanatoka Western. Pia kulikuwa na huyo governor wa Kajiado ambaye anatoka pia Rift Valley. Kulikuwa na Kalonzo Musyoka ambaye anatoka upande wa Western.
Eastern.
So it has some national outlook compared to this Ruto Raila alliance.
Okay.
Ambayo kuna Rift Valley na Luo. So unless they bringing more faces, haitakuwa bado haijakuwa na national outlook. So Kenya Alliance wakiungana, the problem of Kenya Alliance is that all that combination hawana political clout na influence ya kuliko Uhuru na Ruto na Raila.
All right.
Hiyo ndio ile shida yao. Upande wa refugee,
yes.
Mwenzangu mimi wacha niseme hivi, kwa vile mimi natoka Garissa na tuko bora na high refugee camp. Jana nimesoma ile statement ya Matiangi na alikuwa he cited security issues.
Yes.
Kumbuka ya kwamba wakati 2013 Al-Shabaab waliattack Westgate na 2015 Garissa University na 2019 hapa ile hoteli ya Nairobi. Hatukusikia serikali ya Kenya ikisema watu watoe hawa refugee. Wakati huo tulikuwa na very serious security issues. Saa hii ile tu waseme tu ukweli ni hii mambo ya border dispute, hiyo ndio ule ukweli na kila mtu anasema hapa. Lakini angalie saa hii currently speaking, nchi ya Somalia iko very under intense tension.
Okay.
Viongozi wao wanapigana na hata ule uchaguzi ambao ulikuwa unafaa ufanyike March mpaka saa hii haukufanyika. Kwa hivyo tuko na rais ambaye wakati wake umekwisha ndani ya ofisi na wapinzani ambao wamekataa election kufanyika hiyo nchi.
Okay.
Sasa hivi tunaongea hata wale wakubwa wameanza kutoroka, wengine wamekuja Nairobi, wengine wameenda Britain, wengine wameenda wapi. Wao wenyewe hata wale ambao walikuwa na pesa na kila kitu ndio wanatoroka hiyo nchi. Sasa mama maskini ambaye ako na watoto 3 anaishi hapa refugee ama Kakuma, unawapeleka wapi? Nakumbuka ya kwamba hii sisi wa Kenya kesho tunaweza kuwa refugees kwa sababu hata 28 ni Mungu tu na Kofi Annan waliingia kati. Otherwise hii tumekuwa refugee upande wa Sudan, Mozambique na kila mahali. Kwa hivyo tukumbuke ya kwamba leo ukipiga kifua ukisema ya kwamba uko na hivi, kesho huo msiba wewe mwenyewe unaweza kupata. Kwa hivyo let us be pragmatic, let us be rational before we send these people to a country that is in the prospect of violence and political instability. Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Ibrahim Hassan, they are very well said about the refugee crisis. Ibrahim calling us from the county of Garissa. We also have Kefa Bosire calling us from Eldoret. Kefa, good afternoon. Kefa? Kefa, can you hear me?
Mungu alipotaka mimea alizungumza na ardhi.
We seem to be having a connection problem there with Kefa. We'll try to reconnect with him. Let's talk to GYAN WAHOME calling us from Kisumu. GYAN, good afternoon.
Yes, Ben. Good afternoon.
Talk to us. Let's start with Ruto Odinga. Is it a potential alliance from where you sit?
Hey, Ben. Kenya politics is a big joke. It's a big joke. Ben, we were in this country when all along William Ruto has called Raila all sorts of names. We were in this country, Ben, when Raila himself has pinpointed a lot of corruption scandals in Jubilee, more so pointing at Ruto.
Yes.
Raila cannot play a second fiddle to Ruto in 2022. And you know very well, Ruto can't deputy Raila as the constitution bars him from becoming a DP for a third term. Raila and Ruto are opposite of each other then. Whereas Raila is a man of high integrity, a man who has fought for the second liberation of this country.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, they are incompatible. These alliances that the people are talking about, Ruto, Odinga, it's an impossibility, and I would disagree. As much as people say that politics is about interest, but I don't see a chance where Raila can team up with Ruto, going by the sentiment they've given this year. Remember, Ben, Raila himself has separated himself from Ruto, and it will put a very different picture or a very different image if around Raila with Ruto in his camp. Ruto claims of having a party with a national outlook. When we were in this country when Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto shared a 50-50 government, what did Ruto do? He appointed all his tribesmen. So this assertion that Ruto is trying to say that all of a sudden they have a very common thing with Raila.
All right.
It's just the
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, GYAN, from where you sit. Which of these politicians who have expressed their interest to vie for the top job which of them has a national outlook from your perspective?
Well, forget about this camp that is calling itself One Kenya. Those are non-starters. Because if you look like, if you see an individual like Mudavadi, we all know that it took Raila to resurrect Mudavadi's political career. The same to Wetangula. Gideon is just being prepared, and that one, we know it. The only person that can stand the test of time, and he still remains beatable, is Raila Odinga.
All right.
And the only thing that Raila Odinga can blow in 2022 is by him teaming up.
All right.
Not against Ruto.
Let's leave it there. Let's leave it there, GYAN, because of time. Thank you.
Lastly, let me comment on the refugee.
20 seconds only. 20
seconds. Ben, you have to remember, Ben, there is a caller who has just said, tomorrow we can be refugees somewhere, Ben. So this I think Matiang'i is being too emotional with this issue.
All right.
We have to remember, Ben, that as much as Dusit, Westgate, and all those attacks were planned in as the government state, we have to approach this issue so soberly. I know our diplomatic relationship with Somalia has never been good, especially after Farmajo came into power. And now that Farmajo's ending in Somalia, I would really urge if we can have a very different way of resolving our issue with Somalia. Thank you.
Thank you, GYAN. GYAN WAHOME, they are calling us from Kisumu. That's where we leave it from the phone lines. Let me go to the panelists now for their final remarks. Let me begin with you, Hesbon. Your final thoughts very quickly. One minute only.
Well, I think, Ben, my final thoughts rest with COVID-19 and the whole issue of livelihoods. If we have to protect life, how then do we fend for ourselves? My advice to Kenya is very simple, that with the lockdown protocols and all the measures put in place by the government, ultimately the ball is on our court. If you have the opportunity, go and get vaccinated. If you have a way of working with within these protocols to, address some of the needs that you have, respect the protocols, protect lives, and make sure that you create an opportunity for other Kenyans to not only protect themselves, but also to make a livelihood.
All right. Thank you, Hesbon. Mark.
Ben, let me start with, and allow me to give two last comments. Let me start with the pandemic and the measures the president has put in place. I am really tired of Kenyans on social media coming out to say how unfair it was for the head of state to close bars. I wonder to myself if they really cared about the lives and the livelihoods of the barmen and bar ladies and the car wash guy who works in that bar. Why were they walking in there without masks? Why were they sitting so close to each other without caring for social distancing? Yes, our political class let us down in holding super spreader rallies, but we let ourselves down every time we decided the mask is for the beard and social distancing is a thing that we will do only in our imaginations. So, as far as I'm concerned, Kenyans need to realize that just the same way the state has the right to stop you from committing suicide by a rope, it has the right to stop you from committing suicide by exposing yourself to COVID-19. On matters politics, this nation needs to realize one thing, that as a country, we have high-octane politics all the time. But the problem with this high-octane politics is it has so much back and very little bite. The question we must ask ourselves is this: coalition or not, how are they going to address the very real issues of an economy post-COVID that they will inherit? Don't ask yourself whether Kalonzo is Kamba or whether Wetangula is Luya. Ask yourself, what will they do to lift us out of poverty? And don't forget one thing, that you have a responsibility, not only to mask up, but also to find out how your economy will survive. And complaining there's a lockdown is not going to help your business or your family. You've got to think and you've got to find a way around it.
Thank you, Mark. Bwana Wakili, your final thoughts.
I think in terms of lockdown, it's not all negative. The farmers, the people who are able to go about their daily activities should do it now, because there is no way coronavirus is going to stop a person from rearing his livestock and doing the poultry and doing farming. And we can do quite a lot of generation of good food for the country. Number two, now that Ruto and Raila, now this on a political front, are actually kind of warming up to each other, this is a clear classic warning to the citizens of this country that we have now grown as a democracy, and political leaders should not actually make a big deal in your life. If you can see they are willing to go back and shake hands. Now, what will happen with you who is fighting in the street for somebody you don't know, that person is meeting the other one in the night? So we have now grown up. We should know that we should never hate each other or fight each other or kill each other because of political differences. Yes.
Well, we find ourselves in a moment, as did Sir Patrick Henry in his time, crying in the chambers that give me liberty or give me death. Today, with matters pandemic, we ask ourselves, whatever the state has put on our laps, what do we choose, liberty or death? The liberty to take precautions and all the protocols of the Ministry of Health, or to choose the death by ignoring the same and find ourselves in the dark chambers of 6 feet under. But now moving forward, it is the honors of Kenyans to realize that this pandemic is changing the world, and so must we change with it. On the issue of the political factions being formed, I am not excited about the One Kenya Alliance or Raila-Ruto working together. I will only be excited if at all we as Kenyans will rise one day facing east and say, we've got politicians or coalition by way of their manifesto, the issues they're articulating, whether it's a question of tax policy, whether it's a question of infrastructure development, etc., that is so exciting by kind of panoramic view that a politician has or a platform has to change Kenya for the better.
Thank you. This must have the final word.
My two panelists have described toxic politics. You recall some time ago, ODM legislators said that the train has left the station. We are not going to review these BBI documents. Now at the National Assembly and Senate, the same politicians from ODM, they're saying, wait a minute, we cannot be conveyor belts. We've been elected to present Muraya we need to review this thing. Now, that's the toxic politics we keep on talking about. Because they are populist politicians, they're able to sway morale whichever way serves their selfish interests. And then again, we must congratulate our neighbors at Tanzania for a peaceful transfer of power. I was able to watch the proceedings from A to Z, and I admired the way the authorities there, the institutions worked to ensure that any mischief was nipped in the bud. And it's not something that we are supposed to take for granted in East Africa. Because, you know, we've got mischievous politicians. Indeed. So we must congratulate the new president, Mama Suluhu Hassan, and hope that she moves with speed to repair the Kenya-Tanzania relations.
Indeed. Thank you. Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, political analyst Javas Bigambo, lawyer and political analyst Ishmael Nyaribo. We also had with us in the show today Hezbon Owila, governance expert as well as communication strategist Mark Bichachi. Gentlemen, many thanks for your time this Sunday. As we leave it on the show, be sure to join us every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on Inside Politics, Kenya's premier Sunday morning political broadcast, where we try and dissect some of the biggest political and policy issues that matter to you in the country. I am Ben Kitili. Don't go anywhere. Weekend at 1 is up next with George Maringa.